Should I do the clap thing? It was like ages since I did the clap thing. Okay, 3, 2, 1. That was how I synced my videos back in the day before I had Final Cut Pro. Hi friends, and welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to a video where I will be talking about 5 favorite books that I shouldn't like. Perhaps you saw my last video, which was 5 books I would use to describe my reading taste. And in the comments of that video, my friend Kevin from Much Ado About Books, I will link his channel in the description, he suggested that I make a video where I talk about 5 books that I perhaps shouldn't have enjoyed based on my reading taste. Call it whatever you want. Call it 5 favorites I didn't expect to enjoy, 5 favorite books that don't match my reading taste, I don't know. So in this video, I'm going to talk about 5 books that I have given 5 stars, that I have loved and adored, but that I perhaps didn't expect to enjoy as much as I did, or that were surprising to me that I enjoyed them based on what I knew about the books before. So once again, it's gonna be a bit similar in me talking in regards to themes and topics, similarities between books I don't tend to enjoy, and so on, and why these books still, despite that, stood out to me. What's also interesting about the pile of books I plan on talking about today is that many of these are books I actually read at the start of my booktube and reading journey, I would say. So some of these books I read back in like 2019, 2020. So they are early on in when I re-entered my reading era, so to say. Nowadays I do feel like I read such a wide variety of books. I read across multiple genres, multiple types of authors, multiple themes, topics, paces. So I don't really experience the same type of surprise, I guess. Obviously, I sort of have a recipe for what I'm very likely to enjoy. Watch my previous video if you haven't. But I'm not as surprised or unexpected when I find a book that's an outlier and that don't match those previous things. All of the books I'm gonna talk about today, I've given 5 stars. I'm very excited to talk about them some more, and I do think that at least one of them will shock you. Let's start with the first book that came to mind when I started to think about books for this video. And that is A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. I read this back in December of 2020, I think. I filmed an entire video filming my experience of reading this book, filming clips of me crying to this book. This used to be so incredibly hype on BookTube. Like, this book was everywhere. Everyone was making vlogs of them reading this book. And that's what prompted me to buy the book and later on read it. I don't see many people talk about this book anymore. For good and for bad, I would say, because it is an incredible book, and I will talk about the premise of it soon, but it is an incredible read. It's also an extremely triggering book that not everyone should read. Emphasis on that. Not everyone should pick this up. They make the book so incredibly tragic. It's awful in many ways as well. This is a book that's over 800 pages where we are following 4 friends. They were college classmates, and we actually follow them throughout their lives. And throughout their lives we see all of the aspects: jobs, relationships, friendships, traumas, tragic, so on. One of the 4 characters is called Jude, and he has a lot, and I mean a lot, of childhood trauma. He's also struggling a lot with chronic illness and so on. It's heavy. It's an incredibly heavy book, and I don't want to talk it down, but like, I just want to put so much emphasis on that. I'm gonna put the book triggers for this one as well in the description box, because it needs to be highlighted and mentioned before anyone feels like picking this one up. I personally wasn't prepared, which for me was okay, because I'm typically not easily triggered by books, or I don't have that many triggers, but for someone that does struggle with that, stay away, go the other direction. It's 800 pages of us following 4 characters throughout their entire lives, or like from college until they are old. It's not necessarily slow paced, but it's extremely wordy. A lot of the story is told through flashbacks, memories, like long sections without any type of dialogue, which for me can be quite boring. I usually prefer dialogue, I usually prefer fast-paced books. This one did not have that, and despite that I gave it 5 stars, because throughout these 800 pages of word after word after word, I was never once bored. I was never once discouraged by the writing to put this book down. The only reason I ever felt like not reading this book was because of the topics in it and because of how heavy it was, and that I didn't want this to make me depressed because I knew I would get depressed if I read it. But never once by the writing, and that's what stood out to me. The execution of this book is brilliant, which is why I gave it 5 stars. It's a contemporary, it's not fantasy, it doesn't have those types of elements that I typically enjoy in chunkers. Would I recommend it? Yes, if you have checked the book triggers and are still okay with reading it. I love this. I am so happy I read it. It definitely did impact my reading in a way. It made me more interested in stories like these ones. Not necessarily tragic and traumatic stories, but more like stories where we follow characters throughout the years and we have a core group of friends and so on. I have tabbed so many like quotes and moments in it as well. She knew that he wore his life on his skin, that his biography was written in his flesh and on his bones. Damn it was good. I'm still astounded by the fact that I actually read this one. I'm flipping through it now and it's like, how did I get through this freaking book and love every single page of it? Maybe I should reread this one day. Let's step aside. Let's continue with other books. Next one that I thought of is The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. This I read in 2021, I think. This book was originally written in Portuguese, so it's been translated. It's about this Andalusian shepherd boy who travels to see the pyramids because he feels like he is supposed to. That's the worst possible description, but sure. This is another one I tabbed a lot because I found the quote to be really stunning in this one. Why didn't I expect to enjoy this one? Multiple reasons. First of all, it's a translated work, or it's a shorter translated work. I do want to read translated works and I do occasionally make an effort to do that, but I found that if I read shorter novellas that were translated, they are very much hit or miss for me. Usually a big miss. Also, this is very much centered around spirituality, and I would not consider myself to be a spiritual or religious person. So that is also another reason for why I did not expect to vibe with this book. The third reason is actually that I had actually read this one before. I first listened to this one as an audiobook. I only gave it like 3.5 or 3 stars back then. But I had this inkling that, I feel like there's more to it. And that's when I purchased it as a physical copy and reread it and loved it. Why did I enjoy this then? Well, I did like the lessons that were taught throughout this one. I don't feel like the spiritual part of it was as much on the nose as I had initially expected. Or perhaps I just read it at the right time. I'm not certain. I definitely understand why it is such a popular and well-known book as well. I thought it was a beautiful story. I wasn't really bored. I wasn't annoyed. I liked the character. I liked his journey. As I said, I really liked the quotes and his life lessons. And it was a story that stuck with me for a while. A book I did not expect to align with, and I actually did. Next book is Insignificant Events in the Life of a Cactus, written by Dusty Bowling. This I think I read back in early 2020, possibly something like that. I don't quite remember, but as I said, the start of my booktube reading journey. The reason why this is on the list is because it's a middle grade, and I basically I don't really read middle grades. At least not in my adult years. Okay, I remember now. I needed to find a book with disability representation for, I believe it was Bookopoly, the Bookoplathon Readathon in September, hosted by Beck and the Books. And this one was recommended somewhere, and I had just gotten Scribd, so I found it as an audiobook and I listened to it and I loved it. This story is about a girl, I believe her name is Ava Green. Could she be around 11, 12, something like that? And she has no arms. She was born without arms. It's the story about her and her family. I think they moved to a new town. She needs to start school, find new friends. This book is incredible. This little girl, this character is incredible. The spirit she has, the positivity, the optimism. She is the most incredible character of all time. I loved her. I also really enjoyed the audiobook experience of this one, and It blew my mind. It was so great. I had no complaints at all. The representation is incredible. We also have a boy with Tourette's and many other wonderful characters in this one. And this is also a duology, and I did love the sequel just as much. It's an incredible book that I feel is incredibly underrated. I've never heard anyone talk about it really. Please pick it up because it is that freaking good. It was middle grade. I had very low expectations because it was early on in my booktube journey. I hadn't really listened to that many audiobooks before, so I was still quite skeptic to listening to audiobooks, I guess. And also it was a middle grade, and I was like, hey, why should I listen to a middle grade? It's not my thing. I don't care. Here I cared, okay? I cared about this girl, I cared about her future, about her adventures, her relationships, and highly, highly, highly recommend this book. I want to spread the word about insignificant events in the life of a cactus because it's chef's kiss. Incredible book. Next book that I also listened to as an audiobook quite early on in my booktube starting out type of era was I'm Thinking of Ending Things by Ian Reid. This was also one of the earlier audiobooks I listened to, I think, and the thing with this one is that it's a horror or a thriller type of horror, and I don't really remember anything about it other than the fact that the audiobook actually scared the shit out of me at one point. The execution of this book was just so well done. I think the story is about a girl and her boyfriend. The story starts out with them being in the car, and they are driving to stay at the guy's parents' place for like Thanksgiving, I believe. While they are in the car, this girl is sitting in the passenger seat, and basically throughout this entire trip, this entire book, she's thinking about whether or not she should break up with her boyfriend. That's where the title comes from. I'm Thinking of Ending Things. They arrive to the parents' place, they have their Thanksgiving or whatever family dinner they are having, and it just escalates. And I really do not remember the details of it, other than the fact that I was super invested. And it tripped me up, and the audiobook experience of it was like so freaking good. 5 stars because of that. It's surprising to me because A, I haven't read that much horror. B, it's sort of slow. It's a very different type of story. It's not really fast paced, but it's not really slow paced either. And the book is not too long, I think. I think just the experience of the book, the twists and the turns and the thrills all just impressed me a lot. And I am still to this day trying to figure out what types of thrillers and horror I enjoy. I'm not that well versed in those genres. What does add up with this book and why I gave it 5 stars is because I do think that atmosphere is very important for me when I read a thriller, and this book was definitely incredibly atmospheric. I would recommend you to pick this one up actually, because it's an experience. And now for the last book that I will talk about in this video, which might come as a great surprise to many, maybe, or not at all. But that is Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. This is where it might get a bit confusing, because I put another Fredrik Backman book, very similar in themes to this one, in my 5 books I will enjoy video that I just made. So why would I put a Fredrik Backman book in this video? Here's where we get to the point where I'm not certain if it's like books that surprised me or books I shouldn't have enjoyed, or like I don't know. I'm just gonna stop blabbering and explain why I have this book here. And that is because this is the first Fredrik Backman book that I ever read. And this is the Fredrik Backman book that changed everything for me. Before this book, I was extremely skeptic to reading Swedish authors. Based on reading I had to do back in school, like elementary school, high school, I did not enjoy reading books written by Swedish authors. I don't really know why. I still struggle with it till this day actually. I picked this one up because I was doing my trying to read the winners and nominees from the Goodreads reading challenge that I did a couple of years. And this book came second in the fiction category. So I saw that my library had it as an ebook, so I borrowed it as an ebook and started to read it and became obsessed. I fell hard for this freaking book. And that was so extremely unexpected of me. Because, as I said, I have never liked a Swedish author before. And the fact that this book made it so that my favorite author now is a Swedish author, it doesn't add up. So I finished reading this book. The first thing I did was that I went to the bookstore where they had a deal that was buy 4 books for the price of 3. And I picked up 4 pockets. 3 Fredrik Backman books, including this one because I wanted it in a physical copy so I could reread it at some point, and then a 4th random book. I basically went to the store, bought every single Backman book I could buy, and brought them back home, and started to call Fredrik Backman my favorite author, thanks to me reading this book back in January of 2021. I owe this book everything, and I haven't reread it since, but I am planning to reread it now in June, and I'm insanely excited about it because I'm gonna annotate it and tab it. It's gonna be epic. Hopefully it lives up to the hype and like all the excitement I felt when I read it for the first time. I'm certain it will. I'm forcing everyone to read this, and Fredrik Backman now as well. Like, this didn't only change my life, it's been changing everyone else's lives. Because every time I buy a book for someone now, I buy them a Backman book. And that's it for 5 favorite books that surprised me, / 5 favorite books I did not expect to enjoy, but I did, or 5 favorite books I shouldn't have liked. I hope you enjoyed learning more about me and also about these books in this video. It was actually a lot of fun to think back to the times when I were reading this. Once again, a major thank you to Kevin for suggesting this type of video. Please check out his channel, he is great. Thank you so much for watching this video, I really hope you enjoyed. Please take care, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye! Ow.